I can't wait to show you how cool these things are as we go back to our CSS3 demos website. Now, as we return to our site that we've been building upon from the previous modules, we can see it's starting to come to life, but again, lots of opportunities for us to apply maybe some subtle rounded corners. Let's find a really simple example to start, maybe in our contact area. Maybe I can make some of these things in here rounded. Let's see a simple example of that here by just applying it to an input. Returning to Visual Studio, I'm going to create a definition for that, a rule. So the input is simply going to have a border radius that is going to equal just 1 EM. I'm going to save that, return to the browser, and refresh. So now my inputs are rounded. This could be desirable. And as we learned before, I could even go and specifically target certain corners if I really wanted to just have certain corners done. Let's tackle something a little bit more challenging now. I'm going to go over to the topics list. And how about this whole unordered list? Maybe I can make this thing rounded. Let's see what we would have to do to make that work. Returning to Visual Studio, I'm going to create a rule here targeting the topics unordered list, and I want to make sure that it has a border radius. Except I want this one to be 2. I will save that, return to our site, and refresh. Well, I didn't see what I was hoping for. I wonder why. Let's examine this. I'm going to go now into the code, and let's see if we can figure it out. Whenever we're applying a border radius to an element, we do have to be aware of the fact that at times, depending on what the content is inside of that element, it may agree or disagree to be bordered along with it. If it disagrees, as the case we had here, then we may need to target specific areas inside of that element to make sure that it's going to agree. So let me show you what I'm talking about. By adding these rules here, I'm now targeting specific line items. The first one, the fourth one, the ninth one, and the last one. These, of course, represent the various corners now that we have these separated columns in our list. By applying these here and saving this, if I return to the site now and hit refresh, I'll see the rounded corners now appear in those specific areas. Now the question could be asked, did we actually need to have the border radius at the unordered list area, since these seem to have done the job? The answer to that is perhaps not, but in a future feature that we're going to discuss, you're going to see where that's going to be an advantage to keep it that way. So I'll leave it there, and let's look for our next opportunity to have a rounded corner. Let's apply it at a grander scale. How about at the content level? The content is essentially everything on the page. Let me provide a border radius of 2. Save that and view it in the browser. And again, I didn't see the change. For the very same reason I had to do with the unordered list, I'm now going to target specific corners of some of the inner content so that it'll work. I'm going to need to look at the footer, and I'm also going to need to look at the header. So back in Visual Studio, I'm going to add a rule here. I'm going to target the titles ID, which is the top corners of our header section, that they also have a border radius at the top right and top left. I'm going to do the same now for the footer. I also want to make sure to have a slightly rounded effect within the content area with my articles and sections. So I'm going to do another one for articles and sections. I'll refresh. As you can see, we have rounded corners all the way around the content. If I go from the about or the contact, is a good example where we could see a slightly rounded area here where the gradient was applied. Just offered a little softer touch here to our site.